Hey, Rick Sayes here. Welcome to another episode of the Outdoor Biz Podcast, where I speak with retailers, brand managers, athletes, executives, and others in the outdoor biz to get their thoughts, tips, strategies, productivity tricks, and ideas that you can apply and take your career or business to the next level. This episode you're about to listen to is with Stephen Matera, a fellow outdoor photographer. Stephen has built a solid career as an outdoor lifestyle and landscape photographer. I've had the pleasure of working with him when I was a product manager. His clients include National Geographic, Cascade Designs, Backpacker Magazine, Kelty, and a slew of others. We had to deal with a bit of a Skype crash in the middle of this, but don't worry, you didn't miss out on any of the good stuff. In this conversation, we talk about how he got interested in the outdoors and photography, his catalyst for working with outdoor brands and commercial photography, and a little about how social media has impacted his work recently. Enjoy. Welcome to the Outdoor Biz Podcast. We have Stephen Matera with us today. Stephen's an outdoor photographer, a good buddy of mine. Good to have you on the show, Stephen.
Hey, thanks, Rick. Good to be with you.
Yeah, awesome. The first question I have, I was looking at your background online, and I want to know how you got into and out of electrical engineering. I don't think I've ever heard that story.
I try to keep it a deep, dark secret. You blew that away. Thanks, bud.
Sorry. It probably is good training, though, for photography. I mean, you know how all the electronic side of things work, I'll bet.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I have an electrical engineering degree, and I actually did that for about 10 years. Never really liked it. You know, when people used to ask me what kind of engineer I was, I would tell them I was the bad kind.
Nice. You don't want to hire me.
That's right. Well, I mean, it was true too. I was just really I never had any passion for it. Huh. You know, and I did okay, but and so I really wanted to get out of that. Right. And I was doing photography on the side. Well, I did photography from high school on. Okay. And I got out of college. I was like, okay, I want to really pursue photography. It was just recreational to really kind of just do it. I love doing it. Right. And so that ended up being my transition to that from engineering. I was like, oh man, I love this. And okay. Jump ahead too much here, but engineering was never really something I was passionate about, right. And so photography became a great outlet for passion, and that just kind of took on a life of its own. Right.
And how did you get into photography? Did you take a class when you were in high school or something, or how'd that come about?
Oh, I guess I probably did a couple classes in high school, but I was just kind of goofing around with it, and then kind of put it aside during college. I was too busy, right? Drinking and skiing. Right. But,
no studying.
Probably, there was no time for that. That's what I did.
Yeah. Sounds like my college education.
After college, I moved out to Seattle, where I live now, and I started getting into hiking and mountaineering and mountain biking, and it became a natural thing to bring my camera with me, right. And to start taking photos. And after a while, the reason for getting out became less about the activity and more about an excuse to go take pictures.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that changed my drive. And, I'm still passionate about the outdoors, but right. It's another way to experience it instead of just getting out there and, redlining my heart rate or something.
Right. Before we get too far down the photography path, what was your first exposure to the outdoors? Did you go on family camping trips, or did you just buddies when you moved to Seattle? How'd that happen?
It was probably a mix of growing up. We did a lot of skiing, mm-hmm. My family, mm-hmm. And we'd go up to Vermont or upstate New York or wherever skiing, and that's it's kind of a nice introduction to the outdoors as a kid. Right. And we also did some camping, but it was more like my father had a trailer, a camp, like a pull behind kind of thing, and so it wasn't real camping. It was, I guess it was
real camping. That's real outdoors. Come on.
Yeah, it was kind of glamping before glamping was a word, I guess. Right. I mean, we're talking back in the 70s and early 80s, but
what kind of trailer did you have?
I can't quite remember. It wasn't big. I'm gonna guess it was probably like 15, 20 feet. I mean, I was
And how many kids?
I was like
just you?
my brother and my sister and I. I'm the youngest of three.
Okay, so the whole five of you would go on little camping trips. My family did the same thing. My parents had a 1959 Airstream, which was a classic even then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They didn't know anything about sleeping bags. My mom would take sheets, and then once a week she would go wash the sheets if we were on a long trip. It's crazy.
That's awesome. Oh, that's great. Where'd you guys go?
We'd go to local, test out camping trips to local campgrounds and stuff up in Lytle Creek and out towards the San Jacinto Hills. And then our big trip was to Wyoming. We went to Yellowstone, and that was like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It was hilarious though, watching my mom do the sheets, and they would have to heat water to wash their hair. It's like, man, come on, we're camping. Come on.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we didn't have such glorious places to go to. I grew up in New Jersey, and we would go to New York or Vermont or something like that. But it's still it gets your blood going. It gets you excited about the outdoors.
Yeah, and seeing all the beautiful country, right?
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I can remember the moment when I decided I wanted to move out west. I mean, it's a pretty distinct memory. And I imagine everybody who grew up in the East dreaming of mountains can remember this personal moment. But for me, it was in college. I was on a ski trip to Colorado, and it was my first time out west. And we're on just, the big tour bus being driven from the airport to, I think it was Breckenridge. And we're driving out I-70. And I don't know if you've ever done that drive from Denver.
Many times.
Yeah. So there's at one point maybe halfway between Denver and Idaho Springs where the highway crests before it starts dropping down towards Idaho Springs.
Yeah.
And you get that first real view of the high alpine of the Rockies.
Right. The close-up. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I was sitting near the front of the bus, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is where I want to be.
Nice, yeah.
It sticks with you. It kind of it changes your mindset, and there was really no going back east. There was no option for me to do that after graduation. Then it was just a matter of where out west I was going to move.
And how'd you pick Seattle over Colorado with your exposure to Colorado?
Yeah. So I had a good buddy from college who moved to Boulder, and I was thinking of moving there. But then my brother moved to Seattle about a year before I graduated, and so I kind of went back and forth. And I just said, okay, I'll go to Seattle because I got some family there, and I'll check it out for you and see. And in a couple of weeks, I'll have lived in Seattle 25 years.
Wow, good for you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. Time goes fast, but you put roots down. I know this place so well, and there's just still a whole nother lifetime of places to explore out here.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the whole country, really. I mean, there's even in the East, there's great places to explore.
Yeah.
So, and then you just started taking your camera along, or what was your first photography? When did you get a camera in your hands first?
It was probably I have a good buddy. Believe it or not, his name's Mike Hattrip, but he's not the Mike Hattrip that we all know and love. It's another guy, a snowboarder here in the Seattle area who I got to be friends with, and this is when I was still working as an engineer, and we both had these schedules where we had every Friday off, so we'd go up every Friday and get some turns in, and I'd start taking pictures, and he was a snowboarder, so he liked having his picture taken.
Right.
Maybe that's what you need is some snowboarder buddies, right? Because it doesn't matter how old they are, they all like having their photo taken.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe I just get my old buddies on snowboards. That could be fun.
That's right. Entertaining too.
That's right.
So we would just start. We'd go up, skiing and snowboarding, and I would bring my camera and we'd take some photos. And then I had another buddy who was big into mountain biking and hiking and backpacking, and we did the same thing. And it kind of grew out of that. It was really that passion for the outdoors that I wanted to come back with some photos of it. Right. And after a while of doing that, I started just sending some of my photos to magazines. remember this is like 20 years ago.
I was going to say this was the slide film days, right? And you had to come
Yeah.
back and develop. And what were you? What was that process like? I mean, how did you
Well,
decide to
it
create a
was different
portfolio?
from so many ways, right? Because not only were we shooting slides, transparencies, but the business was different. I mean, the photo business was completely different. I mean, it was
Right,
a lot easier to just kind of send somebody some photos and maybe get published.
right. Not that
And
many people doing it. Right.
yeah, exactly. It was a different business, a lot more open
Hmm.
and approachable, and they were still, they're out there keeping their eyes out for new talent. Yeah, so the business has changed, and it used to be a lot easier to just kind of approach, publishers or editors or companies about doing some work. And so I
So you,
started off with some
sorry,
local magazines.
you were also magazines editors as well as brands at that point. You're reaching out to
I
manufacturers.
was.
Okay,
That was after maybe a year or so of just submitting photos to some local magazines.
gotcha. Mhm.
But again, being in the outdoors, I'm shooting photos with tents in them and people backpacking, and
Right.
so I would just look at the brands that I had photos of, and even if
Just
it
your
wasn't
own
current,
personal gear, right? I mean, you hadn't at that
yeah,
point. It's all the stuff you bought.
that's right,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's right. And even if it wasn't selling or sending them photos that they might want to publish, it was a good way to just get some photos in front of them, and then they might say, "Ah, this is great," and they may not want to hire me at that moment, but they might send me some current product to
Right.
shoot.
Hmm.
So it was kind of like a foot in the door, and then you kind of get the door wedged open a little further with each time. So
Right. And what were some of those brands back then?
I think, let's see, Sierra Designs, Cascade Designs. There's a lot of stuff here in the Seattle area that
Right.
I was
Right.
able to approach. Outdoor Research.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Okay.
Cascade Designs is multi pronged company, right?
Right. Right.
Uh,
So you've been shooting with
that's-
them for a long time.
yeah, it
Yeah.
goes back a ways.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and then how has your relationship with the brands evolved over the years? And I guess the magazines as well, because you still shoot for Nat Geo and other folks. I'm sure that's gotten more sophisticated and a little more formal, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And instead of doing what we call spec work, which is what I just described,
Right.
do more pretty much contract work now. So, and honestly, the business has changed too. It kind of goes hand in hand. I mean, there are some companies that will still do spec work, but more often than not, they have a very specific idea of what they want to shoot,
Yeah.
and so they'll contract with a photographer to do a specific shoot because they say we want this in this situation, and they'll do a creative brief. And as opposed to spec work, they send you some product and you go out and shoot what you want to shoot,
Yeah.
and it's a little spray and pray kind of thing.
Yeah, and it seems I'm not obviously as well established as you are in my photography, but it seems like they use spec work to test drive new photographers. Everybody these days has their guy or their two or three guys and gals that shoot for them, but they use spec work to test drive new folks. Yeah, here's some product, here's some ideas for a shoot, go see what you can come up with, and then that's how they find their
Yeah,
newbies.
I think there's some of that. I think the bigger clients are maybe not doing a whole lot of that, unless like spec work might be me as photographer. I'm doing a shoot, say for this backpack company,
Hmm.
and like, all right, well, I need some fresh apparel, so I might approach an
Gotcha.
apparel company. And say, hey, I'm doing this contract shoot. Do you have some samples you can send my way?
Right.
And it may not be something they'd be seeking out, but if somebody sends them some photos that they didn't cost them anything to get, sure.
Right.
But if they are generally looking for photography, they'll do contract work. So you're right, but it depends on the company
Hmm.
and the creative team and how they like to approach it.
And then what percentage of a shoot? Say you shoot 1,000 images. I'm sure it's much more than that on a shoot. But what percentage of that does a brand typically pick up? And then I guess you can use the rest for stock.
Yeah, so every contract's a little different, but I've had clients who say we want everything from a shoot.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
And that's cool. They just have to pay more for it.
Right, right.
Or some clients from a shoot, they'll say we need 10 photos from a day of shooting. And so it's kind of all over the place. But typical might be 20 to 25 photos from a day of shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is it's like, when you're doing a contract shoot and setting stuff up and moving around, yeah, you might come back with 2,000 photos, but there's a lot of similar and things like that. It doesn't make sense for them to want all the photos.
Right.
And then, if you're really if they want a lot of images and you're cranking stuff out, it's going to reduce the quality and creativity of a shoot.
Right.
So you're kind of like balancing shooting for the client and their needs and trying to be creative and get unique stuff. And but every shoot's a little different, and I get all sorts of requests.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So walk us through a typical day in the life on a shoot. So, I worked with you on a couple of shoots for Jansport back in the day, but I think that's probably evolved since then.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in fact, Jansport was one of the clients that wanted all the photos from a shoot.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. So a typical day of shooting, you said?
Yeah, just it's a no dark 30 wake up and you're shooting and what time do you start, what time do you end, and what goes on in the middle, sort of. Not details, but
yeah, for sure. So I like to think that like 75 or 80% of a shoot happens before the day of the shoot.
Right.
There's a lot of prep that goes into it. Logistics and wardrobe and permits and
scouting, and you have to come down to an area and check it out before you want your spots picked out first.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's something really important for me about going to a location, and I think it is important when you look at like how a shoot goes to look actually what happens before the shoot. And there's usually phone calls and emails and discussions about what the client is looking for in terms of the look and the feel and the vibe. And
how many of your clients give you a creative brief, or is it all done verbally by the phone?
Almost everybody will give me something.
That's good.
But how in depth they are and how specific varies. I mean, I'll get a very specific shot list from some clients, even a specific setup of a shot, and then some will just give like a general vibe they're looking for.
Right.
A common thing to do now too is for a client to create like a Pinterest board, like of type of shots they're looking for, and that really is great.
Yeah, that probably helps a ton.
It does, because you could. Well, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. There's somebody smart said that sometimes.
Right.
But you can sit there and describe it to your turn blue in the face, but to really understand what somebody's talking about, a picture really helps.
Yeah.
But for me, there's always a bit of what's the word I'm looking for? Insecurity and nervousness, and I'm a little unsettled about the whole process.
Right.
Until I scout.
Oh,
because
okay.
What really, even if we're shooting in a place I've been to many times, because what happens is, we have these discussions about what somebody's looking for, and I try to picture it in my mind, but then being in the location, I start to see how I can apply the look they're going for to this specific spot.
Right.
And, just being there, I can start seeing potential shots. And what I try to do, the adage is you always start, your first shot before the shoot starts.
Right.
And that way you can kind of, you don't have to sit there and try and be creative on demand.
Yeah, sort of that, right, yeah.
Yeah, right. But what I try to do is actually have my first 2 or 3 shots in mind.
Yeah.
And number one, it's good. It makes you look better for the client instead of just fumbling around,
figuring it out as you go. What are you doing? I'm making stuff up.
Yeah, but there's really something to be said for this kind of creative zone.
Yeah,
I think a photographer and I can get into, and once I get the kind of creative juices flowing, I hate that that cliche, but I think I just used it. But once you kind of get into that zone, it really kind of flows, and it's like that first step is always the hardest.
And how many
But
times? I'll bet a bunch of times when you're scouting a place that you've been many, many times before for a different client, you probably see things from a different angle, right? I mean, you're looking. If you're not, say, you're going to you're going to scout for a trail run, and you've only been in this spot for hiking and doing trekking poles and things like that. When you're looking at it, you may look at it from a different perspective and see things you hadn't seen before. Does that happen a lot?
Man, that is spot on.
Really?
That is, yeah, it's really true. And then, in addition to what you just said, yes, I mean, the way you look at your perspective on things can completely change how you see it.
Yeah.
But also the light and the season and the
weather is a huge impact. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you're a photographer, so you know, like, this probably happens to you, I imagine. Like, my memory of a trip is largely dictated by the photo. Right. Yeah. And so, like, somehow I always forget about the long approach. I have no pictures. And
it looks so short on the map. It's not that far.
Right. Exactly. I don't have any pictures of this, so it must have gone so quickly.
Yeah.
But getting out to a spot, you start to see things that you didn't think about before because you're in this mindset to look for certain things, you know.
Right.
Yeah, it helps a ton, and I tend to start seeing different shots that I didn't see before, exactly because of what you said. Because okay, now I'm looking at this for trail running or hiking that I didn't see before. So yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so, talk a little bit about some of the routines you have to stay motivated and in shape, because you shoot a lot of pretty strong adventure stuff, skiing and whatnot, and you have to chase these athletes all around, right? I mean, you have to be in front of them oftentimes, and those guys are in such great shape. How do you stay up for that?
And with a heavier pack too.
A lot of glass. That's right.
Yeah, nobody's making cameras out of balsa wood yet.
That's right.
But if they do, I'll buy the first one.
Yeah. Although some of those smaller mirrorless things are getting pretty close to being usable. Are you shooting with a Sony or a Fuji yet?
I am.
Yeah.
I am. I have right now. I have a Sony A7R2.
Nice. Yeah, I do too.
And an A6300, which I love it, just partly for the reasons you're talking about, small night. But I will probably be getting that new Sony A9 when it comes out.
Yeah, looks like a great camera.
I think that's a game changer, but that's another discussion, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. We could go on for days. We don't want to bore people with gear talk.
Yeah. Or just the wrong people, anyway.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, it's true. I used to teach an outdoor photography course with a local climbing club, where we would do an overnight backpack trip as part of the class. And one of the things I used to emphasize is you need to be in shape to do this, because being creative takes energy. Yep. And if you use up all your energy just getting to the spot that you want to shoot, you're going to be too tired to shoot.
Right.
And yeah, it's even more so when I'm on a mountaineering trip or a mountain bike trip where I'm trying to keep up with an athlete and I'm loaded down. Right. So yeah, being in shape is part of the challenge for sure. And how I do that, I do a lot of running.
Run around the hills carrying glass on your back.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'm doing a mountaineering trip in early July. It's a 7-day trip, and I was just thinking, man, I need to start conditioning, and there's going to be a bunch of hiking and biking and stuff to get in shape for it. And yeah, it's hard. It's especially being a dad to find time to balance all that. Yeah. But somehow I manage so far.
That's good. And, well, yeah, you're doing great stuff. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about how social media has impacted your workflow. I'm sure it's changed how you promote yourself, but has it changed how you work with the brands? Are they requesting images? Do you separate the images for these are for catalog, these are for social media use? Has it gone that far?
So it's a great question, because I think we're in the middle of another big shift in the photography business. The first one that I'm referring to was, say, 8 or 9 years ago when digital really started to become
Yeah.
a useful tool, and how it opened up photography to so many more people who either hadn't done it before because of the logistical challenges of shooting slides and submitting those, and it was just too much work or whatever, but
Right.
also technical challenges of shooting. Digital made it a lot easier for a lot of creative people who were turned off by the technical side of photography. Well, now a lot of those creative people can just go out and shoot and learn digital in a way that they couldn't with film.
Well, it's funny too that the technical side of it has made it easier, right? You can go in and do, 3 or 4 presets and boom, your images is done. Whereas you don't have to know Photoshop it like Indeed. And it's good if you do, but it's much simpler in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And digital, you can correct a lot more exposure issues in post than you could with film.
Right, right.
So that was the first big change, I think, that brought a lot more people into photography and into the business. And I think social media is upending the whole business model. It's not complete. I shouldn't say the entire business model, because there's a lot of photographers, myself included, who are still earning a living as a photographer the traditional way. But what social media is doing, especially Instagram, that I've seen, is allowing photographers to make money off of social media. That's how they make money. They build a huge following,
right,
and clients will pay them to go out and shoot and drop their name in a post. I mean, if you've got 300, 400,000 followers,
right.
That's like a direct line to your client's customers.
Yeah.
And
When
so,
it seems like it's created two levels of photographers, right? There's guys like you who still do the catalog shoots and all those kind of things, but then there's also this social media brand ambassador that goes out and maybe doesn't have all the equipment and level of experience you have, but still gets great images with their phone or whatever they're shooting with, and those tend to be used more for social media, in my perspective, and talking to brands.
yeah, I think that's true. But what I would also say, though, that a lot of these guys who are just shooting for social media are actually using serious camera now.
Oh, okay, so that's changed. Yeah,
I think that's changed in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Some of the guys I know they did start off with their phone, and they realize if they want to do this right, they need to get a real camera.
That's good, because they do get better images with a good camera. Yeah, I mean the phones take great images. Don't get me wrong, but I think still you can't beat a camera.
So much more creative opportunity and you can do with a camera than you can with a phone.
Right.
But I have a good buddy, a guy named John Cornforth, who's a landscape and wildlife photographer, great, very talented, creative guy. And he and I both shoot that Sony A7R2, which is 42 megapixels, and he's got a pretty sardonic personality, and he likes to say we're shooting 42 megapixels for Instagram. Which is, I'm doing it for more than that, but his point being is, it's overkill. The technology has become so good, and people are looking at it on their phones.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's interesting.
But social media for me, while it's growing, I was really slow to dive into it and reluctant. I was initially scared off by the terms of agreements of Facebook and Instagram, where it looked like you were signing your life away.
Yeah, giving away all the rights. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think while it seemed smart at the time to be cautious, I think in retrospect it's like, okay, these companies are really not. I mean, while we are assigning or giving those rights away, it's not like they're out there reselling your images. I mean,
anyway.
I mean, I guess it's possible, but it's become such a force in the business that it's really necessary to have a social media presence. And so about 2 years ago is when I really started to put some effort into it. And, I had missed a lot of the opportunity by waiting so long. And I'm playing catch up. And what I'm finding is I am getting, for me, social media serves two purposes. One is just kind of building a brand,
Right.
and a presence, and I will find that I'll get some interest in potential commercial work through that, which I didn't get into it planning on that. I thought like
Right.
nobody's going to hire me for commercial work from Instagram, but
Right.
um, but there is a little of that. I mean, and I imagine if I keep growing it, I will get a lot more of that. I haven't had anybody ask me yet. No, I'm sorry, that's not true. I have been approached and asked to do some social media advertising.
Hmm.
I've done one with somebody who's now sponsoring me. It's a company called Cotton Carriers, but I'm kind of reluctant to do that at this point. Part of it's my personality. I like the idea of like not advertising.
Yeah.
Um, but part of it, I think I just want to keep it clean for a while.
Right. Right.
That makes sense. I don't know if that's the right word.
No, I think it does.
But
I think it's, the guys your age and my age, we're the older, not the oldest, but the older of the group, and we don't have that same, view of social media and throw it all out there that some of the younger kids do. I mean, they just throw everything out there on social media, and I think, those of us that have, I'm going to say over 50 for sure, maybe over 45, 40, have a little bit more exclusivity about us. We don't want everybody to know what we're doing all the time. It's interesting.
yeah, it's very counterintuitive. I'm not a natural self promoter.
Yeah, same here.
And that's not a good character trait to have as a photographer.
Exactly. It's killing me.
Yeah. I mean, I actually wrote a blog post about how I do social media kind of like kicking, screaming, and just I'm reluctant to do it.
Oh, cool. We'll put that in the show notes. No, reference the blog post, not the fact that you do it kicking and screaming.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, if you're looking for some reading material to put you to sleep at night, you can read my blog. If you're having trouble sleeping, but I think it is an important tool, and as I'm getting more and more of a following, I'm seeing some doors open up that I might not otherwise, and I at least I can see the potential of that.
Well, it's good you're seeing positive results. That's the best reinforcer, right?
Yeah. One thing I didn't expect, and I'm seeing is, I do landscape photography as well, and
Right.
I'm getting some regular requests for print sales that I didn't before.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a little tricky, right? Because a lot think what
Yeah.
I'm used to charging for print sales is different than what people are expecting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in print
So,
sales, I mean, everybody says it's all but dead. I mean, I sell maybe 2 prints a month. It's tough.
yeah, I'm not doing a ton, but it's more than I used to.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't count on it for income, but it's a nice little, check here and
Yeah, a
there.
little bonus. Yeah. And is it mostly businesses that reach out to you, offices and hotel chains and things, or
More personal stuff.
personal stuff? Interesting. That's good to
Yeah,
hear.
yeah. And I think the National Geographic travel Instagram exposure I get helps with that as
Yeah.
well.
It's a broad audience,
They,
right?
Nat Geo pretty much owns Instagram. It's amazing how
Yeah, they're
big
huge.
of a presence they are,
Yeah.
and to be associated with them has helped me tremendously.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Um,
but yeah, social media, I think you can't ignore it, and I'm still trying to figure it out, and pretty much putting all my energy for that into Instagram.
mhm.
There was I went to a Telluride photo festival thing a couple years ago that my stock agency Tandem stock was part of,
Right.
and there were these editor panel discussions where the editors from certain magazines were just discussing a lot of different things, and they were talking about social media, and one of the editors just said flat out, she goes, Facebook to her, Facebook is dead.
Yeah.
I look at Instagram.
That's what I hear
And
from a lot of people.
Yeah, that was an eye opener for me. I mean, this was a couple years ago now, so
Right. See, it's got even
uh,
bigger. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I'm like, okay, that's straight from her mouth to my ears.
Right.
It actually got into my brain, my Neanderthal brain, that I need to do this.
Yeah.
And
And do you do it all yourself, or do you have anybody that helps you, or you pretty much run it?
I'm pretty much running it.
Yeah.
I'm not to the point where I have that, although I love the idea of having somebody do it
Yeah,
for
right?
me.
That'd be
Here's
great.
some photos, make me sound profound
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
and interesting.
It's interesting too. I've been doing a lot of research. Aurora Photos tells us the same thing about Instagram, and there's a lot of pretty interesting tips and tricks that you can use to grow your following by a ton. I've been surprised at I've implemented some of these things, and my following is it's over 2,000 these days, which is not a
Yeah,
lot, but I started out from a very small number, and I just dabble in it. I don't do it as much as you do, but
yeah.
it's pretty cool. Um,
Well, yeah, it's interesting how people are learning these tips and tricks to manipulate or
right.
work this. Manipulate's not the right word.
Yeah,
Um,
that's pretty accurate, I think.
well, maybe yeah, maybe it is, but I think that some people have it dialed.
Yeah.
I mean, they really know how to work it, and you just look at their accounts and you're like, how do they have so many followers?
Right.
It's not. It's the one thing about Instagram that I find very discouraging, and social media in general, is quality does not quality work does not guarantee a big following.
Correct. Right. It's a volume
Um,
game. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and that's unfortunate. That's kind of discouraging, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you would hope the best work would rise to the top, but Instagram tends to negate that advantage that good work would have. Doesn't mean that good work doesn't help. It does,
Yeah.
but I've seen accounts with like 10,000 followers, and all they do are like teenagers doing selfies.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that's the nature of social media. I think that's the other reason why I have trouble with it is there's a lot of stuff that's posted out there. It's like, really? What? Who cares about that? And then it's
Yeah.
amazing to see how many people do care about that. It's like, wow, I had no
Yep.
idea. So,
Yep. Yep.
yeah. So, shifting gears a bit, what opportunities do you see in the outdoor biz for young photographers today, just starting out? Is it largely social media, or I mean, I know a lot of great young shooters that are doing good quality work for some of these brands and Nat Geo folks.
Yeah, I think that's shifting too. But I think social media is one way to get in. But again, you have to approach them with a big following. I don't think anybody will even talk to you unless you have 100,000 followers now.
Right.
If you go back a year ago, if you had like 30,000 followers, you might get some business out of that. But now, if you have to have like literally, I think 100,000 is this number.
Wow.
But people are getting 400,000 or 500,000 followers.
That's amazing.
It's astounding.
Yeah.
It's completely amazing. And this one guy I'm good friends with, my name's Scott Krantz, is one of these guys who's doing just that, and I think he's up to like 350,000 followers. But when I first met him 2 years ago, he had like 20,000, and he is one of these gurus. He just knows how to work it, and that's how he makes his living.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, good for him. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah, and he's only been a professional photographer for less than 2 years.
Yeah. Wow. And how about reaching out to the brand side? I mean, how would you suggest someone get started? Just reach into a brand or go show a book at
Yeah,
run it around
yeah.
at the retailer.
So if you don't have a big social media following, and again, I'm not really an expert on that side of things, but build a portfolio, and it doesn't have to be any specific brand. Just if you're specifically wanting to get into the outdoor industry, build a portfolio. Go out, shoot, get your friends. Hiking, skiing, climbing, whatever you love to do, and just shoot the shit out of it. Oh, sorry, I guess
That's okay.
we can bleep that out if we need to.
Nope, that's you know what it is what it is.
Shoot a lot and learn and get a nice portfolio. And the outdoor retailer show is okay. It's a good way of kind of getting your face out there. But I still think some of these brands can be just approached with a phone call or an email, if you make the right connection, and just getting your work in front of their face, whether it's sending them an email with some photos,
Yeah.
or start with some local companies and some local magazines,
Right.
um, because they're still always looking for, I hate to say this, but cheap work. Um, where if you're willing to just do some spec
Inexpensive.
work,
Inexpensive.
yeah, yeah, there you go. Um, but always been a way of getting a foot in the door, and it's still true.
Right.
And that's when, if they give you that little opportunity, that's when you work your butt off to
Right.
impress them, and exceed their expectations. So then, when they have some real money to spend, they'll have a little more confidence in spending on you.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing too. People have to make sure to do great quality work, no matter the volume of work requested or the price that they're paying you. Right? It's all you have to establish your levels of quality and your levels of integrity and deliver that all the time.
Yeah, consistency, right?
Yeah, right.
And and when we say great quality, it's not just like a nice picture with great light, but creative and
Right.
unique with not with your perspective, right? I mean,
right, different, unique perspective. Right, there's a lot of things that go into quality. Correct.
When I look back at when I first started, and actually not even just when I first started, but for a long time, I had a hard time taking myself legitimately as a photographer. I was very insecure about it, and like, oh, I'm not a real photographer, right? I had a
They're not
day
going
job.
to pay me for this, really.
Right, right. Well, that was part of it too, right? It's like I would do it for free. Why would they pay me for it?
Right. Yeah.
I love it. I love it so much. I would do it for free.
Right.
Um, but I guess my point is just, if you're kind of just starting out, take yourself seriously. You gotta believe in your own work, and get it out there.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing because you're putting yourself out there to be judged constantly.
Yeah.
Constant judgment. And you're going to get smacked down, and you kind of got to roll with it. You got to be able to take some criticism, or, the way it usually works is not so much criticism as like no feedback whatsoever and no.
Right. The sound
Yeah.
of silence. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and it's, I equate it to, being a great hitter in baseball. I mean, if you're batting 300, you are a phenomenal hitter, but that means 70% of the time you're striking out, making it out, doing something. And photography is very similar, right? If you're doing 30%, if your work gets recognized and purchased and whatnot, that's huge. So
Yeah, that's a great analogy, Rick. I think the percentages in photography, especially now, are even lower.
I was going to say lower. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a 10% hit rate, good on you, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's it's a tough business. Good work will make you stand out, but so will good hustle and being professional.
Yeah. Right.
I mean,
yeah.
if somebody thinks you are just kind of like a flake or unreliable, they're not going to want to hire you. And just being easy to work with. I won't name any names, but I've heard stories about other photographers in the outdoor industry that people say that person has good work, but I'm not going to work with them because they're kind of a jerk.
Yeah, I've heard that before too. Yeah, they're tough. Yeah.
And that makes me feel good to hear that, because I think that I am a good person to work with and pretty laid back, and hopefully that
It comes through. It's like everything. I think if you treat everybody fairly and you're positive and upbeat all the time, you're going to get a lot more friends and a lot more work and a lot more interaction than if you come in all surly and negative. And
yeah.
So,
the other thing I'd say too. Let me just add one more thing, if you don't mind, about getting into the business. I was never the kind of photographer that would network and collaborate and meet other photographers, and I don't know why, but I was kind of reluctant to do that. And I started doing more of that a few years ago, and I wish I had done it for a long time, because it's a tremendous thing to just talk to other photographers, learn from their experience, and hear what they're dealing with, and commiserate. And
right.
It's an incredible tool, and you can get some work out of it too. So
interesting. Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah. So any daily routines or other things you have to keep your sanity and all this lack of response to sending out images or beating yourself up? Do you anything you do to books you read, podcasts you listen to?
So, it is interesting because I'm small enough that I'm mostly here in my office working by myself.
You're pretty much a one man
And
band, right?
yeah, I mean, I've had interns and stuff in the past, but and I hire assistants and things like that when I do shoots, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm mostly doing it out of my home office, and it's mostly myself. And I have some, like, I work with a company called Wonderful Machine for some marketing and things like that, but all the office work is me. But So it's a very solitary existence in a lot of ways that people don't quite understand. I
Right.
mean, I think um, the idea of what a photographer does is out shooting 90% of the time. And I think the reality is probably the flip of that. You might be out 10 or 15% of the time shooting, and the rest of the time is editing or
Right.
working on a computer or marketing or, you know,
Yeah.
uh, all the things that are need to be done to run a business. And so for me, an important thing is to get out and get some social interaction
Mm-hmm.
because it just feeds me in terms of my mental health. And I have some creative friends in the Seattle area who, they're freelancers of some sort, whether it's writing or photographers, that I stay in regular contact with, and we'll meet for lunch or go for a run
Yep.
or
Awesome.
a bike ride or something like that. And that to me is so important.
Yeah, I
I think
agree. Yeah.
just I wither from lack of social interaction and just general human interaction.
Yeah, I've got a couple of folks that I get together regularly here in Bishop. This one woman, we get together every Tuesday for coffee, and she has a little small business, same kind of thing, one man band, and we just talk about what's working, what's not, and it's huge. And you get a lot of good ideas that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just I'm never I'm a very collaborative kind of person.
Hmm.
That's how my creativity works best. And I think it's impossible for any one person to exist in this vacuum and come up with the best ideas on everything.
Right.
And
Right.
so it is, I think, super important to have that collaborative interaction or even just interaction
Yeah. No, I
to
agree.
get
100%.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough
So
when
that's
you're.
one. Sorry.
I say it's tough when you're out there on your own shooting or scouting or you know.
Yeah.
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 Cool.
Um, and the other thing is, I try to get out and go for a run or some sort of exercise every afternoon, or at least 3 or 4 times a week,
Uh huh.
because it's such a mind clearing thing to just get outside and
Yeah.
get the blood flowing, and it actually helps me think a lot more clear that way too. I have a lot of times while I'm running, I'll be thinking about an upcoming shoot or any number of things, and it's like I can think about it a lot more clearly than when I'm sitting at my desk with a lot of distractions of like other things I need to do.
Yeah. No, there's been a lot of studies that talk about running and walking. I do some walking pretty every day at lunch. I get out and go for about a 30-40 minute walk, and it's amazing how the mind processes things as you're moving and looking and breathing the air, and you come back and you've solved the problem. Or it's
Yeah.
just it's really cool. I don't know what the scientific studies are that I'm sure someone smarter than I can relate all that, but it's pretty interesting. It does work.
Yeah, and I think that something I realized in college, I think actually, our subconscious is, even when we're not purposely thinking about something, our subconscious is working on it.
Yeah.
I remember in college, like with an engineering degree, I was had a lot of math classes, and math is something I didn't take too easily. I had to work hard at it,
Hmm.
and there were these concepts that I was trying to learn, and I wasn't quite getting it. And I would literally wake up in the morning, I'm like, "Oh, I got it!"
Yeah,
Right?
sleep does the same thing, right?
Yeah, the brain was working on it in the background.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's
That's
true. Yeah, it's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah,
That stuff's really cool and important.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So, anything you want to ask or say to our audience as we go to wrap here?
um, you know, the, I guess it's about the photo business. And I heard a photographer say years ago, you need to kind of reinvent yourself every few years, and I think that's really true. It's even more true now with just social media changing things and
Mm.
digital changing things. But one of I don't mean to sound cynical here, but I don't like the adage that if you're passionate about photography, you'll be successful. Because I don't think that's true. I don't want to sound cynical. It's probably true for most.
Totally agree. There's some work involved there.
Yeah, not just work, but I mean, just because you're passionate doesn't mean you're good.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, work. You got to hone your craft. You can't just be passionate and show up. There's still some, things to go back to that quality thing that we've talked about. In order to be creative and find good locations and unique perspectives, that takes some work.
Yeah, and exactly. And I may not come across this way, but I think I'm a very insecure creative photographer. Getting a little better at that, but
I don't get that. I don't get that from you at all. Just for what that's worth.
Well, for a while I wouldn't look at other people's work because it would make me feel inadequate.
Well, that's tough. Yeah, we all do that, right? Stay off of that compare slugger. Oh my God, that's terrible.
Yeah, but I think there is value in looking at other people's work. Not like you're trying to copy them, but it inspires a lot of ideas.
Right.
And so I'm kind of doing more of that than I used to be, because I avoided it because it made me feel inadequate.
Yeah, it's like, geez, I'm not as good as that guy. No, I get it. Yeah.
Right. But I think it's interesting how the creative process is really mysterious, and there's periods of like intense creativity, and then there's these lulls where you're like, I can't think of anything.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And the curve for creativity is not linear, but it's awesome, and you really got to put the effort in. When you look at some work of some photographers you admire, there's a lot of work behind that you can't see, a lot of learning and struggle.
Yeah.
And so I guess if there's any advice for any photographers that are thinking of getting into it, is expect that, and don't expect instant success, and plan to work your tail off and do what you're passionate about.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's good advice. And where can people find you on the interwebs? All the usual places. I'm sure.
I try to keep a low profile, but I do have a website, materaphoto.com. It's Matera photo. That's my sports and lifestyle website. And then I also have a second site I'll tell you about. It's just a landscape photography site. It's StephenMatera.com, and it's Stephen with a PH, so StephenMatera.com.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we'll put all that in the show notes.
Awesome.
I'm sure they can find you on LinkedIn and Facebook, and obviously Instagram. You mentioned that.
Instagram, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, for sure. And there's links to all that on my websites as well.
Perfect. Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for the time, Stephen. I appreciate it.
Hey, you bet, Rick. It was fun to talk.
Yeah, always good catching up. And will I see you in Salt Lake in summer?
I will be there for sure.
Cool.
And like I said, I might be down in the Eastern Sierra before then. If I do, I'll let you know for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Let me know if you come down scouting too. I'd love to get together.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks. Have a great day.
All right. You too, Rick. Thanks, man.
All right. Cool. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Stephen Matera. You can find him at materaphoto.com. Be sure to check out his fabulous landscape images at stephenmatera.com. That's StephenMatera. You can find links to all the info we discussed in the show notes at theoutdoorbizpodcast.com/episode 002. Thank you so much for listening, and be sure to tune in again next time. If you want more of the Outdoor Biz Podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes or go to stillwaterscode.com/podcast, where you will find all our interviews, see the current work we're creating, our reading list, plus much, much more. Follow Rick on Twitter at RickSaysPhoto and on Facebook at facebook.com/rick.says. Until next time, thanks for listening, and be sure and get outside.